What a start to the day. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the Pleb Underground. I'm your host, Phil. The Bitcoin price, 66,192. The block height, 936,071. Total public lightning capacity keeps bouncing around between 5,200 and change and 5,700 Bitcoin. What the hell is going on over there? What is going on? I don't get it, guys. I don't get it. You know, you got the government lying about how good the economy is doing, and everything just keeps dumping. It's almost like people know that they're not telling us the truth. It's pretty crazy. But more importantly, right, seeking the truth are Bitcoin OGs, right? These fabled this idea of this ideal Bitcoin OG. Have they given up on BTC? Is there any truth to that at all? We're going to take a look at some stuff around that. What else? Last week, was that the capitulation event? Was that it? Was that our bottom? Obviously, people who want to buy Bitcoin at a much lower price are telling us no. People who want Bitcoin to go significantly higher much sooner are saying yes. Somewhere in the middle, though, there's some truth. We're going to take a look at that. Is there a reasonable chance that we did see the bottom last week? I'd like to hope so, right? But that's part of my hopium. And we're going to show some data points around that to provide some context for it. But maybe my favorite signal of all is Cramer talking about Bitcoin. That's right. We're also going to examine Goldman Sachs Bitcoin holdings, of course. And we've got more news from the state. That's right. We've got Michigan Governor Hopeful talking about Bitcoin. He's saying the magic words. We've got an update on the Clarity Act. And also looks like Cashapp is really pushing to get people to be living on a Bitcoin standard. A whole lot of stories, a whole lot of drama. Let's do it, guys. Here we go. Pleb Underground is sponsored by Archimedes Emporium. Discover the pinnacle of precision engineering, starting with their Bitcoin logo wall clock, meticulously machined in Maine from a solid block of aerospace-grade aluminum, ensuring unparalleled durability and performance. Experience the difference of a product made without compromise. Head on over to Archimedes Emporium. That's right, ACP. We're going to dive right into the hope. That's what we need right now, especially since what we're seeing with the Bitcoin price dead at 66K, right? Need some hope. We need some hope. All right. Good morning, Silent Lamb. Good morning, Johnny. Good morning, Bitcoin Beacon. And good morning, ACP. So, Bitwise CIO Matt Hoogan. That's right. He's got some comments about the Bitcoin OGs. Let's hear what he had to say.
Let's go back to the OGs, because I debate this with my friends on Twitter all the time. These people, are they still into Bitcoin? This is what I worry about.
Who are these people exactly?
I get, like, okay, you were in it for 10 years, you survived so many sell-offs, you want to take some profits, you earned it, silent IPO, but are they taking their ball and going home because they don't like that it's been so institutionalized? Someone compared it to when your parents joined Facebook and everybody left. I mean, is that what's going on here? Are they still believers? Because I think you need the base still to come along for this ride, or are they going somewhere else?
Yeah, they're mostly still believers, Eric. It's a great question. I think it's about 80-20. So there is a cypherpunk libertarian OG deep core of Bitcoin that maybe...
It's kind of funny that Matt Hoogan knows this better than some Bitcoiners. It's kind of funny.
He is frustrated that Larry Fink and BlackRock is a big player in that space, but that's a shrinking minority. We speak with many of these investors. We've been working with them over the last couple of years. What they're doing is trimming their sales. You have to remember, these are people who invested a few thousand, maybe $10,000, and ended up with millions of dollars. And they were looking at crypto's familiar 4-year cycle. They've lived through that 4-year cycle in the past, where the fourth year is typically a big pullback year. And they wanted to take some profits off the table, but they haven't turned their back on Bitcoin. The vast majority are still in it, and they're being augmented by new institutional investors. I think the story that most of OG crypto is giving up on the space, it just doesn't align with the people that we talk to, with the investors that are working with Bitwise.
Well, Well, to get
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, right? That we've got Matt providing some better signal than some people spreading FUD, and of course, right? I mean, we could also take the other perspective that he's also providing Hopium, right? Don't forget, he is the CIO of Bitwise, right? Where none of us are better than our incentives, right? He is incentivized to tell people that, hey, the early adopters are still here. From my personal experience, the people that I've known throughout the years, they are still here. Indeed, there are some people who have left, right? There's some people who have left the space. And of course, you can't just look at one specific social media platform and decide this is every single person who is into Bitcoin, right? Like the people that are on, let's say, Twitter or Nostr or, YouTube or Twitch or whatever, doesn't make a difference which social platforms you're on. A very small minority of actual Bitcoin hodlers. Not every single person that buys Bitcoin decides all of a sudden that they want to spend every waking hour talking about Bitcoin. It's not unusual. It does kind of also remind me of this comment that Jimmy Song made, which, by the way, we are supposed to have Jimmy return to the show. We had him on the show 2 years ago. He is going to be joining us, I believe, at the end of February. But Jimmy made a comment about how the principled OGs were selling. And I couldn't help but make a meme out of that because I did find that really funny. Like, look, this is something that I've said before, which is incredibly unpopular, but it is realistic. Every single one of us, right, are at different points in our lives. Every person, right, more or less desires different things for themselves. Sure, there's some commonalities that people desire, but the road is not straight to that point, right? Not everybody has the same risk tolerance. Not everybody has the same amount of patience, right? All that stuff. So the idea that the blanket statement, the principled OGs are selling, that's nonsense. But the other side of that statement, where the OGs are not selling, is also nonsense. People are just being people. And yeah, there are some people who have held on to Bitcoin and accumulated it for 10 years. And guess what? What he was talking about, that IPO moment, right? Those are essentially, in my opinion, Bitcoin hodlers who went either to the Bitcoin treasury companies or the Bitcoin treasury companies approached them because they found out that these people had a lot of Bitcoin and they proposed something to them, right? Like, you're going to sell us your Bitcoin at a specific price. We're going to give you shares, right? And that way you get to go and dump your shares on the market. There are indeed some Bitcoiners who did this. It's just the nature of the beast, right? Myself, I had no interest in providing my Bitcoin to any one of these Bitcoin treasury companies. Also, I was not approached. So maybe that says something about the perception, right? The perception that you give people. So who knows, right? Maybe they're just like, that guy's not going to give us his Bitcoin. Anyways, I just don't place so much importance into the Bitcoin OGs are selling, okay? Because people are buying and selling at all times. And just one last piece about this. I remember back in 2017, 2018, right? I got to know Francis Pulio, and I also did an interview with him. And it was something that I had recognized, and you can call it whatever you want, but the reality is that the earliest Bitcoin hodlers, right? The ones that want to actually grow the ecosystem, grow the business, right? Do all of this stuff. Well, guess what? Those hodlers, okay, at some point, they are going to start to sell some of their Bitcoin. They're not going to sell a lot of it, right? Some of them may take loans against it, whatever it is that they're doing. But a lot of these guys put money back into the Bitcoin ecosystem. Francis went on to build Bull Bitcoin, right? Like, and you can see what's coming from that. Yeah, absolutely. And I remember it dawned on me at that moment. It was like, yes, like we are buying, like in my case, right? I am buying bags from the OGs, and some of these OGs, they are turning around and building Bitcoin businesses. I don't see anything wrong with that. It's just the nature of the beast. So anyways, yeah, that's, I'm not really worried about that stuff. I'm not really worried. Of course, we're going to show you other data that points that the OGs aren't selling at all, that everything is actually way more wonderful than we could ever imagine. Okay, here we go. We're going to get some Hopium from Check On Chain or Checkmatey. Anyways, last week's Bitcoin sell-off, more confirmation, guys, meets the criteria for textbook capitulation event. It occurred rapidly on heavy volume and crystallized losses from the lowest conviction hodlers. Net realized losses exceeded 1.5 billion per day. Spot futures, options, and ETF volumes all surged on to extreme levels. Futures markets were meaningfully deleveraged as long bias positions were flushed. Realized losses reached their largest absolute USD print in Bitcoin's history. Look at that chart. Max daily loss, guys. I don't know, man. I'm getting that feeling. That it kind of reminds me of in 2019, 2018, when people thought that Bitcoin was going to go to 1,700 when we were at 3,500. And they waited, right? They're like, I'm going to get double the Bitcoin. I just got to wait. None of that ever happened. Okay? None of that ever happened. So just something to think about, right? A lot of people that waited for the 1,700. And this is why this is why what I did was just continually stack, right? I'd get a paycheck, take a portion of it, stack, get the next paycheck, take a portion. And of course, right? You always want to buy more, and you wish you had more money, more dry powder, all that good stuff. That's fine. That's all just thoughts, right? That's all just thoughts. The key is persistence, repetitive behavior, and a goal. Okay. And of course, you need to have a quote unquote, I guess you could say like a fiery desire, right? To reach that goal, right? That's what it takes. Anyways, just my opinion, just what I did. All right, guys, more hopium. Check this out, man. Bill Miller's loaded than like most of us. So there you go. Bill Miller's saying there's a reasonable chance that we saw the bottom last week at 60K. All right, Bill Miller, CIO of Bitwise. Let's freaking go.
That's how I teased it. You have a number in mind. What is it?
I actually think there's a reasonable chance we saw the bottom last week at 60,000. There's a couple of reasons for that. First and foremost, $60,000 is the cash production cost for a new Bitcoin.
Okay.
So what happened?
The cash production cost, I wish they would stay away from that number. There was a really great video by, I believe, Warren, and he totally explains this whole entire nonsensical number that people try to rationalize and come up with to figure out if the miners are all going to capitulate because they can't afford to mine Bitcoin. So even though I appreciate Bill Miller's hopium,
Happens is when you get below that, the weak miners start going out of business, they shut down, and they're the main source of marginal selling pressure. So when the weak hands are out, okay, you have a less selling pressure and it's likely to put in a bottom. The second reason is Bitcoin trades on global liquidity. And if you look at when it peaked in the fall, it just so happened to be the exact same time that the Fed noticed huge stresses in short-term funding markets that effectively created an entire 180 on monetary policy. Okay. So if you look at what the Fed was doing in the fall, they were allowing $50 billion a month to go off of their balance sheet, just drain away. Now, what happened in December? They did a complete 180 on that. And what they're doing is buying $40 billion net a month. So you've seen a net swing in liquidity from the world's largest liquidity provider to the tune of $90 billion a month. Mm-hmm. So you have this huge floor of liquidity, right, that just came in. You've got the cash production costs there. And there's another technical element here, which is if you look at historical bottoms in Bitcoin, they've often happened when the percent of the supply in loss exceeds the percent of the supply in profit. And 60,000 is right around where that happens. So you have a whole bunch of factors converging at around 60.
Okay, it's funny you mentioned.
Yeah, we've got the factors converging around 60. We've got the business cycle that hasn't peaked. There's all kinds of this feel-good hopium, which, believe me, I absolutely want to be real. I try not to buy into it a little, too much. That's all. All right. Here we go, guys. More stuff. Bitmaster, he removed all other BTC indicators. Only thing that's needed is the power law bottom. And that's right, guys. Here we are. So close to that power law bottom. We're going to do a double tap. We're going to come down. It would be glorious, though, to see us touch that 60K region. I know people are going to hate me for this. For us to touch that 60K 3 times, right? That's going to get the bears. It's like a bear trap. It gets them thinking like, oh, yeah, that's it. We are about to break the floor. So we do it's like a triple bottom and then just all of a sudden notch up. That would be glorious. Would be absolutely glorious. I'm sure somebody's selling a paid financial service talking up that point at some somewhere on that. All right. Let's dive into the Cramer stuff. Now, the Cramer stuff is actually really interesting because, as you guys know, Cramer works for thestreet.com. So let's hear what Cramer had to say, and we're also going to take a look at some other framing coming out of thestreet.com. Okay, here we go.
Reports, people are starting to get unnerved by how closely aligned this stock is with the price of Bitcoin. Even after today's dramatic rebound, Bitcoin still feels like it's lost its luster. The precipitous decline of the cryptocurrency occurring at the same time as a weakening dollar calls into question whether it's a real storehold of value or even a hedge against inflation. We know nothing. This volatile thing used to be.
He just stands there, doesn't learn a fucking thing about Bitcoin. We know nothing. No, bro, you know nothing.
Used to think it could be a currency. That's obviously not going to happen. It's a great speculative asset, I guess, until it starts.
So he doesn't know anything about the Lightning Network. He has no idea how many people are providing liquidity. He has no idea how many people are opening channels. Nothing. He has no idea how anybody is using this for peer-to-peer payments. No clue.
Plummeting. So Robinhood may be the repository of something that's become toxic and I think a lot less dependable.
It's good for us, guys. It's good for us. We've got the #1 clown in the circus, bearish on Bitcoin. The stars are aligning. The stars are absolutely aligning. Now, Bitcoin Magazine, right? Bitcoin Magazine saying Goldman Sachs reveals it bought and holds 1.1 billion worth of Bitcoin in a filing, right? Take a look at that. It's super, super positive, right? Now, let's look at the streets framing, right? Keep in mind, we just watched that Jim Cramer clip where he's very bearish on the prospects of Bitcoin, right? It's all about framing, guys. This is an article from the street about the same thing that Bitcoin Magazine just talked about. Bitcoin Magazine frames it like this. It's Hopium, 1.1 billion worth of Bitcoin that Goldman Sachs holds. Look at the way the street frames it. Goldman Sachs Bitcoin holdings reveal 45% unrealized loss. Okay? So, based on their fourth quarter 2025 form, Goldman Sachs holds indirect exposure of approximately 13,741 Bitcoin, valued at about 1.71 billion. So you can see, right? Like this is, you're watching the narrative battle play out in real time, right? Bitcoin Magazine, of course, is incentivized to tell us how everything is rosy and the future is bright. Whereas thestreet.com, for whatever reason, has decided that Bitcoin is now a piece of crap and they're going to dump on it. And there you go. You've got the main court jester, Cramer, talking about, we don't know what this is. It's going to zero. I can't explain it. And then you've got this article, boom, Goldman Sachs sitting at a 45% unrealized loss. Bitcoin's dead. You got to be so, and again, this is why you have to build your own conviction, right? This is why you have to take the time to understand why Bitcoin's qualities are not just important to you, but why they would be important in everyday life. Okay, like, because otherwise you're going to see these headlines and they're going to sway you, right? They're going to sway your emotion. They're going to sway they might sway your decisions, right? Like that's dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Okay, on to the state. Here we go. We've got some, and I remember this from 2020, 2021, during that election cycle. We had a whole bunch of people come on the show that were political hopefuls, right? And they were all willing to say the magic words. They love Bitcoin. Bitcoin's great. Unfortunately, none of them could actually explain anything about Bitcoin beyond the typical public-facing talking points that would help get Bitcoin supporters to pay attention to them, right? So anyways, not saying that this guy doesn't believe in it, just saying they're politicians, guys. They're politicians, okay? That's their job. Their job is to be a politician, right? Their goal is to garner your support. Okay, just anyways. I'll protect Michigan families, not stifle innovation. It's time to let Bitcoin compete. All right, sign me up. Grow and give our citizens more control over their financial future. So he is going for governor. He seems to be a Bitcoin supporter. So we're gonna see. We're gonna see if he gets if Tom Leonard gets any support. All right, guys, the Clarity Act, right? We told you yesterday that the White House was meeting with the Crapto group. So here we go. Clarity Act, no deal. Pressure increases. Today's White House meeting ended without a final agreement on the stablecoin yield. What changed? Banks and crypto stayed engaged. So who cares? They have to sit at the table at this point, right? Technical details narrowed. Negotiations continued behind closed doors. What didn't change? Stablecoin yield remains the choke point. Okay. So essentially, right, the banks, they didn't actually come to any agreement, number one. Okay. Number two, right, you can see here there's this draft legislation that they made for it. But the reality is that people are trying to sell this idea. I saw this, that they're going to come to a decision March 1st. Look, I'd love for this crap to stop polluting the markets, because that's what this is, right? This is all just noise and indecision and all of that stuff. But unfortunately, I don't believe that we are going to have an answer at that point. The only thing that they've committed to doing, the White House and this crypto group, is meeting again at the end of February. That's it. That's the only thing they've committed to doing. So anybody that's selling you a story that somehow this is all getting resolved, where the bull market kicks off March 1st, all that's just, they're nothing. That right now they have decided nothing, and the banks are still, for whatever reason, I believe it's a show, because you're going to tell me that the institutions that are charged with printing money out of thin air can't seem to figure out how to compete with another business that's printing money out of thin air? Is this really the angle that we're going with? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, genuinely. Like that is just absolutely nuts. It is just nuts. Okay. Anyways, moving on to Cashapp, guys. So I use Cashapp. I've used Cashapp for a very long time. For my KYC Bitcoin. Also have non-KYC Bitcoin. I lost it in a boating accident. Who knows? Maybe all of it's gone. No, just kidding. All right. So look, Cashapp is trying to help people out, and we're here to talk about it. So they're making foundational changes to help make Bitcoin everyday money. So let's see what they're doing. Okay. 0 to low fee Bitcoin buys on Cashapp. So no fees on large Bitcoin buys. They're talking about Bitcoin purchases over $2,000 US. No fees on Bitcoin on reoccurring buys. That's good, right? No fee Bitcoin spending via the Lightning Network. Interesting. So they are going to absorb the cost for channel management and channel liquidity and all of that. Businesses don't usually do that unless it's lucrative for them. Unless it's an onboarding tactic. So that's going to be interesting. And what else? Every Bitcoin you buy on Cashapp is held 1-to-1. So if you buy it, Cashapp holds it, and you have 24 access to withdraw it at any time. Okay, so I'm going to just throw the wrench in there. I have definitely been blocked by Cashapp attempting to transfer Bitcoin out of their wallet. It's only happened to me once. But it did happen. In fairness, right? In fairness, I was being a degenerate, and I was attempting to send my Bitcoin to one of those gambling sites, right? Where the, you do like the high-low numbers, or like the Bitcoin rocket ship thing. You're trying to get sats. You're having fun. You're being a degen. And Cashapp stopped me from shooting myself, metaphorically, right? That is censorship, though, right? Like, it's like, if I want to go and piss my money away, it should absolutely be my right. So just kind of putting that out there. I do appreciate what they're doing. However, I would just be cautious in believing that, this is not the same thing as self-custody, right? Like, this is why they need to convince you about the one-to-one. Trust us, bro. Your Bitcoin is safe here, bro. You can leave it here, bro. It does not beat having a proper signing device. Your own, where you generated the seed, and this is just not the same thing. It just isn't. Yep, I agree. They are all proven grifters until otherwise. I love when Cramer speaks. I definitely do. Yeah, so that's an interesting thing, right, Sat Stacker? This is this is their whole crying game. The bank's crying game is that, and we reported on this a couple of weeks ago when they first announced it, but that's exactly it. The banks created this number out of thin air that they just decided this, and you'd say, well, Phil, that they don't normally do that. Yes, they do. They did the same thing during the great financial crisis. Almost every single time they give you numbers, it's always out of thin air. There's no real reason why. Okay. So the banks were like, boom, that number's big. That number's going to get attention, right? So now all of a sudden you've got the banks fearful about this thing that they have no idea if it's real, what the implications are. And like, if I'm not mistaken, can't the banks just buy these stablecoin issuers right out? Of course they can. Of course they can. This is just, it's a show, guys. We're watching a show. I truly, last night I was thinking about this, and I'm pretty confident that this is going to be one of these entertainment pieces that drags out until the midterms, conveniently. I hope it doesn't, but I've lost hope in many years ago already. In politicians actually attempting to run the country and do anything for citizens, right? Like, it's all about their voter base. It's all about getting reelected. It's all about grinding out that paycheck again and again. So sorry, that's their incentive, right? That's just their incentive. They'll say what they got to say and they'll do what they got to do to cover it. Anyways, guys, you know the deal. Please donate to these guys. I just talked to you about all these politicians, these scumbags that are sitting there doing absolutely nothing for the citizens that they work for, except putting coders behind bars for writing code. This doesn't make sense. It sets a precedent. We need to fix this. Sign the petition if you haven't. If you feel so inclined to, please donate. Guys, that does it for us for today. I noticed there was like a bit of an issue with X for whatever reason. It's been 2 days in a row now where like either the live stream doesn't show up properly on X or it starts late or something like that. Normally, I'm willing to take responsibility for technical issues coming from a technical background. So for me, it's always just like, yeah, you take responsibility for it and you sort out the issue. But in this particular case, I'm gonna call out Elon and X. Like, your platform has been falling apart and just getting worse and worse. So I don't know what you got to do, but fix your shit. Okay, it's embarrassing. $44 billion. All it is chat, and some voice, right? Come on. I get that there's JPEGs. I get that there's videos too. But at this point, we should be able to handle this, right? Shouldn't we? All right, guys. Have a great rest of the day. I am going to catch you tomorrow.